Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this beautiful Sunday morning for us. My name is Billy Bianchini. I'm the Music ACT Program Manager, and today we're here to talk about how to build an engaging social media content strategy with Dana Young.
Finish the email.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get stuck in with Dana today. But just letting you know that this Zoom is being recorded. So if you wish to make your camera inactive or wish to make your mic inactive, that'd be the way to go. We're also going to be taking questions through the Zoom chat today. So if you do have any questions as Dana's moving through the presentation or as Daniel's speaking, please pop them in the chat and we'll address them when the time is right. So from here, I'll just pass over to Daniel. He's going to give us a brief welcome to country and to tell all of us what Music ACT has been up to.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. In case you're wondering, Billy is the Program Manager for Music ACT. I'm the Director, and I'd just like to do a quick acknowledgement of country. Music ACT acknowledges the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the lands where we are meeting on. Music ACT wishes to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture, especially through their contribution to music and to what they make to the life of Canberra and the region. We also acknowledge all other First Nations peoples who are with us and who's on whose land we gather. I beg your pardon. Okay, I just quickly want to run through a few bits of Music ACT business. Many of you are probably looking for some kind of financial support for your music writing, recording or production projects. Right at this moment, there is an excellent grant fund called Homefront 3, which is open through the ACT government. I'll be pasting the details into the chat. Also, those of you who have got small businesses, you can get support through the ACT government for that, especially if you're a self-employed business. If you are struggling financially in other areas in your life, the music industry has a wonderful organisation called Support Act. Support Act has received a not insignificant amount of federal funding, and it provides emergency funding to people who work in the music industry, not just musicians, but all people who work in the music industry, and also a helpline if you wish to discuss any potential mental health issues or apprehensions you may have, and I'll be putting those details into the chat. I'd also like to just quickly touch on two major campaigns which are running at the moment in order to support, I hope, a future for the music industry in Australia, which is under enormous stress. The first and most prominent is Vax the Nation. Essentially, we're looking for a future where we can return to live gigs, and the quickest way we can get there is if we get vaccinated. I'll paste a link into the Vax the Nation website, and if you could support that either through your socials and communication amongst your communities, that would be greatly appreciated. The simple message is get vax now so we can end the interruptions and return to live music. The other one is a program which was about playing Australian music. It's called Our Soundtrack, Our Stories, and it's a call to arms to play Australian music in our own places of work and in our homes and elsewhere. To that end, Music ACT has put together a fantastic list of tunes on Spotify, and we'd encourage you to use those. Okay, just before we get started, Billy will be sending an email to follow up with information about this particular presentation by Dana Young. And I would like to make a very special thanks to Dana Young, who's this is the last of three presentations that she's doing. Not only has Dana helped us with presenting these events of her own, she's also helped us, I think, conceptualize and improve how we do a digital program online in these difficult circumstances. And it's given us the confidence to plan for 2022, where we want to have what we will call our digital program as our backbone to our professional development program. And when we can do live events, that's a bonus, and we'll certainly keep you informed about those. But so thank you, Dana, for not only doing today's and the last two presentations, but just enabling us to put together a model for digital programming and presentation. And I'd like to just hand back to Billy and we'll get started. So thank you very much. Bye now.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, so today we have Dana Young, who is a music marketing strategist based in Denver, Colorado. She's worked with a wide variety of artists. She's going to get into that in just a moment. But I also just want to say thank you to Dana. It's been an amazing couple of sessions that we've run here. I've learned heaps from it, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So over to you, Dana.
Thank you, Billy. Hi, everybody. I am Dana Young, and I am a digital artist development strategist. I have over 18 years experience in touring, events, marketing, and artist development. I've worked with artists such as ZZ Ward, Nipso, Crooked Colors, and Client Liaison. Brands such as EDM.com and Ministry of Sound. I've toured artists such as James Brown, Axwell and Grosso, and Deadmau5, and I've produced video content that features artists such as the Chainsmokers and Alice in Wonderland. Now, I'm qualified to talk about this topic today, which is creating an engaging social media content strategy. Because much of what we'll talk about here today, I actually implement with my clients. In fact, I've helped to drive improvements in social strategy for musicians, brands, and some of the agencies that I've worked with. Now, creating engaging social media content is a specific marketing tactic that artists can use or can implement to help create opportunities for themselves. Your social media platforms are going to be one of the first places that potential new fans or existing fans go to find out more information about you. Creating a unique content social strategy for those platforms is essential if you want to differentiate yourself and build an engaged and an active fan base. Now, I want to preface today's presentation by saying this isn't going to be about the sexy or creative side of social media content. Rather, the tools and concepts I'm going to share with you are functional and process-oriented, but they're going to help you gain a better understanding of how to go about breaking down how you can approach building your social content so that you can create your own engaging social media strategies. Now that you know a little bit about me, I would love to hear from you guys. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being no knowledge of social media content at all, and 5 being what you would consider an expert, where do you feel that you stand? Pop a comment in the chat. Okay, awesome. This gives us a good parameter. Actually very varied. Okay, well, as we go throughout, feel free to pop any questions in the chat and Billy will field them as we go. Before we begin looking at social media content, let's talk briefly about brand definition. Creating brand definition is one of the most definitive acts of artist marketing. Capturing fan attention is a bit of a chess match in that there's many moving parts played out strategically over a period of time. In fact, capturing fan attention requires you to know and understand your voice, your audience, your aesthetic, and social and streaming algorithms. In addition to that, you must have a clear understanding of your positioning as it relates to other artist brands and be able to easily or quickly pivot as your brand reacts to what is happening in the real world around you. After all, if you can't easily relay your artist brand to fans, how is it possible that you could create a clear and engaging social strategy for your socials? Now, a few weeks ago, I presented a webinar for Music ACT on how to define your artist brand. If you're currently unclear on your artist brand, then I highly recommend that you revisit that webinar link and do the workshop before you create your social media content strategy. It's a great place to start. I've mentioned in the other webinars that I've done that an artist should never talk about just one thing, that one thing being music. Now, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Your fans are invested because they are invested in you, which means sharing how you view the world with them as a way of drawing them further into your unique personal artist story. Artists who only share about their music or merchandise, well, they run the risk of giving the impression that they're one-dimensional, and further, that they're only capable of one conversation, which is themselves. And I'm sure we can all agree that that's not very engaging or interesting. So the question is, how do you bring a more multidimensional voice to the table? Content pillars are topics your brand will consistently discuss, amplify, and create content for on social media. As a marketing tool, they act to help you further define your brand to your fans. They're important because they help you bring a well-rounded voice to your marketing conversations. Something that which in turn helps to build a perception of depth of character and points of interest in your conversation. So let's talk a little bit about how you can potentially build your content pillars. Let's assume that music, so new releases and any other music related content such as music videos, etc., and promotion, so touring, merchandise, live streams, anything that you're selling, they naturally form your first two pillars. Now you're only left with 2 to 3 additional pillars to fill, which doesn't seem quite as overwhelming. To build your content pillars, you want to consider what's important to you personally as an artist, the interests that you have, and what you want to stand for, as well as the degree to which you feel comfortable vocalizing your position on that topic. It's a reasonable expectation that some artists are naturally more comfortable using their voice for advocacy matters, whereas others who might still wish to demonstrate support feel more comfortable doing so or being active in less direct ways. Neither approach is right or wrong. And for artists who wish to show support indirectly while still maintaining a voice on matters that they feel strongly about, there are in fact many indirect ways in which this messaging can be weaved into their content pillars. Let's look at an artist example. We're going to use the example of Justin Bieber. Mental health is a big part of his artist story. And not only does he share information on his personal mental health journey, but he acts as a strong advocate for the subject within the music industry through advocacy. Aside from voice, which is speaking out on what's important to you as an artist, another additional content pillar could be your personal interests. Are you an avid book reader? Could you form a book club? Do you crochet? Are you into gardening? Now, it's easy to imagine that while these interests sound really random, it's actually really probable that a number of your fans may also hold similar interests and might be interested in hearing more about you on topics on which you hold personal interest. Another way of looking at how you can build your content pillars is by revisiting your brand definition. So you can break your brand positioning, your mission statement, and your brand promise into what we call brand pillars, which are essentially content pillars that describe the 3 most important selling points of your brand. Each brand pillar will then be supported by a key benefit statement and a supporting example. These pillars they'll really help you inform the focus points of your marketing content and will help drive determining your remaining content pillars. Let's look at another artist example. Phoebe Bridges is an artist who always fights the good fight. Her brand promise is partly built on making the world a better place. She stands up for what she believes in, and she does so really quite vocally. Here's just a few of the tweets from her over the last kind of 6 to 12 months reinforcing this. It would be fair to say that we could assume that political activism could easily be one of her content pillars. Okay. We're going to dive a little bit now into content buckets. So content buckets are themes or topics used to guide your overall social strategy. What they do is they help create consistent content for your social channels. While each bucket is meant to be specific to a certain topic, they should all connect back in to an overarching brand message, i.e. one of your content pillars. Here's an example of what the content bucket for your music or promotion content pillar might look like. So you can see here that we have themes including official music videos, on the road, behind the scenes, lyric insights, and so forth. However, what this list of content buckets is really providing you with is a well-defined and well-rounded voice on an important brand message that you want to convey. You're not just saying, I have new music out, go listen to it, because that's not always the most interesting way to present your music. Instead, with content buckets like this, you can tell a story about the music, who you are as an artist, and why your point of view is valuable. Let's revisit the Justin Bieber example again. So mental health, his personal story, and advocacy in general are likely one of his content pillars. You might remember about 12 to 18 months ago, he released a YouTube series called Seasons. The series focused on his mental health journey in the lead up to his new album. I'm going to play just a short snippet of the trailer.
Phoebe. You want to start by talking about the last 4 years?
Wow.
Justin Bieber says he is cancelling the rest of his world tour.
As for why Justin canceled the tour, he spoke to maintaining a healthy mind, heart, and soul.
Performing is the thing that he loves most in this world. For him to say that he didn't want to do it, I was concerned.
There was a period where it was really tough for him. He was a shell of himself.
As humans, we go through so many ups and downs, so many good seasons, bad seasons.
You can see just how important his mental health journey is to him as an artist and to his artist story. Now, a piece of content like this, it would fall into the content bucket of behind the scenes. Once you've defined your content bucket, your content pillars, and the content buckets for each pillar, you can now start envisioning I can't say the word, envisioning your content month to month. One of the easiest ways to do this is by creating a content calendar using a project management tool. In that calendar, you want to outline what month to month, what your talking points are. So for example, if the street date for a music release is early October, then it's likely you want to begin sharing news of that release and building anticipation for it sometime in September. Now, using that Justin Bieber example again, his YouTube series was released each Monday over the course of a number of weeks, i.e. months, multiple months. So the news of that series needed to be worked into his social content in a way that was engaging, relevant, and didn't dictate or override the overall tone of his content. A content calendar would have really helped his team to see clearly where such news could fall and how to prioritize it. In fact, knowing your talking points each month allows you to create a balance of content that isn't just focused on only music or promotion. If you can see, for example, that October is light on voice, but heavy on personal interests and music and promotion, then you can plan for this with some additional posts. By doing so, you're going to present a more well-rounded view of who you are, what you do, and the why of why you do it. Now that you've ideated the content that you'd like to include in your pillars, you need to start capturing that actual content. And this is where you move into the content planning phase of content creation. For example, if you have a podcast coming out soon, what are your ideas for marketing the podcast? You want to define the exact content that you need to capture and create that will fill all of your predetermined buckets for this pillar. So a few questions that you might ask yourself include, will the content be image or video based? What assets are required to promote the podcast? So this might include a dedicated web page, guest quote graphics, listener reviews, audio visualizers, and so forth. What resources are required to capture the content? Are you utilizing user-generated content? And if so, how do you plan to capture that and through what platforms? Now, for many of the artists I work with, I use Asana for project management, including the annual content calendar and the month-to-month social media calendar. So Asana is a great place to start. Other project management tools which you might wish to look up include ClickUp, Wrike, Monday, or Trello. All have free versions available. Also, Canva Pro, which I think is about $15 Australian per month with the conversion rate, allows you to create your assets in Canva and then schedule them directly from within the platform. So from a design and social media scheduling perspective, it can be really useful. It's definitely worth checking out. You want to map out your planned posts for each platform so you can clearly see what falls where. And this allows you to move anything around as you need to. Why? Well, in order to create a more well-rounded voice and ensure that the content is balanced. Once you have your content pillars, your content buckets, the content calendar, and the content itself planned, your task at hand is really going to be to engage your audience. Now, there's many different ways that you can engage your audience. Some of which that you might like to consider include a witty, thoughtful, or provocative headline or copy, creative use of emojis and special characters, hashtags, line breaks, quotations, and of course your visuals. Your goal is going to be to drive interactions. Now, imagine if you went on a date with someone who talks only about themselves. Boring, right? Well, much the same way as you would drive engagement on a date, you can drive audience interactions by starting conversations, showing empathy, or acknowledging your audience. For example, when you release a new song sharing user-generated content or fan feedback, let me start again. For example, when you release a song that sharing user-generated content or fan feedback on your release is a great way to acknowledge your fan base. So you often see that from artists in their stories where they reshare a shout out to someone sharing that the song has been released and things like that. That's actually a really perfect way of sharing that others during your release cycle have engaged with your song and that there's hype and demand about it. You can also create conversations by instilling a sense of urgency. For example, your copy could read, "Let me know your thoughts in the comments below now." Overall, creating engaging content for social media means working to provide further value for your audience. So if you curate varied content and optimize opportunities for your own content to be shared, well, creating engaging content for social media can actually become quite simple. Now, we know that it's imperative to clearly define who you are as a brand before you begin to plan your marketing strategies, tools, methods, and tactics. And brand content pillars are something which help you do exactly this. In fact, when you clearly define not just your content pillars, but your content buckets, your content calendar, and exactly what you consider to be the type of content that truly engages your audience, then you are well on your way to creating advocates and lifelong fans of social media followers. Well, that concludes today's presentation. I hope that you all found it valuable, and feedback is certainly welcome. We're going to open things up for questions in a second, and I'll hand back to Billy to do that so he can help field the questions. But before we do that, I want to ask one thing of you. If you enjoyed today's session and you felt like you got a lot from it, please do follow Fred and Augustus, which is my company, on Instagram. I share a lot of information like this on all of our social channels, but Instagram is a really good place to start. And I'll put the link in the chat now. So back to Billy.
Perfect. Thanks, Dana. So good. Yeah, please send through your questions as we're talking about them, guys. I've got a couple here. The first one is just a logistical one. Could you just rattle off the names of those scheduling and project management softwares again?
Sure.
Just so people can write those down.
So the one that a lot of clients that I work with use is Asana. I've actually just started implementing ClickUp in-house. Wrike, Monday, and Trello are also good ones to look at.
Perfect. All righty. I've got a question for you, Dana.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of implicit in everything that you've said so far in the presentation, so thank you. But I just wanted to touch on it again. Why you talked a lot about telling the story behind your music and using that as kind of the basis of your content strategy, and forming the story around the music instead of just telling people it's out. Why do you think that is so important when you're in the lead up to a release or when you've just released something? Why do you think that is an important part of your strategy?
Because marketing isn't just about selling. Marketing is actually about storytelling and creating an engagement that funnels a sale. And so you don't want to just be like, the music is out, go listen. I mean, where is the story in that? What is the reason? So it really is like, yes, the message is the music is out, but the story, there's so much more to the story. Who you are, what inspires you, why you wrote the lyrics, what was happening to you at the time that song was made. Like there's so many deeper levels to a song than just go listen to it.
Thank you. Perfect. We're getting some good questions coming through now, which is great. The next one is, this one is from Jana. Thanks, Jana. Do you find that there is a good amount of posting? Like what's a good level of posting, do you think? Is it once a day, 3 times a week? What does it vary on the fan group?
So it's really going to vary a little bit by platform, of course. Obviously like TikTok, the algorithm responds more favorably often the more videos you post at specific times of the day. Whereas with Instagram, it really is more of a layer. So you want to make sure that you're posting probably 3 to 4 organic, just standard posts per week. You want to make sure that you're posting multiple stories per week, that you are also looking at other ways to engage fans through either the AMAs or the polls or things like that, that you are regularly uploading IGTV content. And even more important at the moment for Instagram is Reels. They're really favoring Reels in their algorithm. So posting 4 to 5 Reels a week if you can, and if you have the content available to do it, you're going to see growth in your followers and your engagement.
Perfect.
That said, a good way to check this is to look in the back. Now, Facebook has just moved a lot of their insights in the last month or so. So I believe you need a business manager account to be able to view those now. But you can still access some of the data through there. And what you want to do is really, it's less about like, there are obviously some industry standards, right? So there are good times of the day to post, and you can easily Google that to find out what those are. I would start there, and then I would start to dive a little bit deeper into what engagement you're seeing at those posting times by testing it a little bit. I usually kind of test everything right throughout the month, and then adjust the next month based on where I'm seeing the best response. But the first place to start is really just kind of using some of those industry standards and then personalizing it a little bit more based on your own profile and the engagement that you get.
Perfect. I've got another question here from Sarah. She asks, with regards to hashtags, I've heard the use of maximum hashtags or the use of limited. I've heard to use like the most, and I've also heard to use a limited amount. Do you have a process that works best for you? Should I be using the most, like as many hashtags as possible, or just a select few?
I think be very deliberate about the hashtags that you use and make sure that they're purposeful. Anywhere between 8 to 16 is a good number. I wouldn't include, I really would even veer away from including much more than kind of 8 to 10 personally, just because it just looks a little overwhelming when you've got, rows and rows of hashtags. So I think really coming back to being deliberate and purposeful about the hashtags that you use is a better strategy.
These questions are coming in thick and fast. This is great. Paul asks, thanks, Paul. Are there particular social media platforms to target, or should you just kind of spam everything like Facebook, TikTok, et cetera, et cetera?
So, something that I hear a lot from artists is, well, do I really need a Facebook page? And while audiences on Facebook are definitely aging older at the moment, I do think it is still really important to ensure that you have at least a registered presence and a semi-active presence on all platforms. Now, we spoke about this a little bit in the last webinar on how to be easily found online, but one of the real purposes of having an online presence, so having a web URL and then having your social platforms, is that Google will and other search platforms will use the activity in terms of not just your followers and your engagement, but the traffic those social platforms drive to your website as an indicator of who you are and where you sit within their digital ecosystem. So even just from a search perspective, yes, absolutely, you should have a presence on all platforms.
Perfect.
What you do on those platforms really is about finding your audience, though. So if you find that your natural audience is on TikTok, but that you don't have a strong number of followers or engagement on Facebook, then you just focus on it a little bit less, and you focus on where your fan base is and where your audience naturally lives. So create content for where your fans are.
Good tip. Good tip. This kind of this is a similar kind of question. I think you may have answered it with your response to that one, but this one is from Natalie, and she asks, is it okay to just have one social media platform?
It's really not.
Yeah, it's really not.
I mean, like I said, even just from the perspective of being easily found online, the more broader your presence is, the more easier it is for fans to find information about you. So just think of how you find information about a new artist that you like right now. You go straight to Google, you Google them, and if you can't find anything, you bounce pretty quickly. And if you can find a few sources, and you go and you listen to music, or you go to their Instagram, or you go to their Facebook, or things like that. So again, like, focus your attention where your audience and your community is and where you feel you have a natural home, but don't overlook the other platforms. They do have a purpose and a function that might not be as immediately noticeable to you, but is really relevant in your overall profile and positioning.
Absolutely. We might do two or three more. So if you do have a last question, you can sneak one in now. But this one comes from Sarah again. Thanks for the question, Sarah. Is there a way to improve a Facebook page's reach and audience aside from inviting people to like the page and liking relevant similar pages? I'm finding it easy as chips to build our Instagram page, but our Facebook page is falling behind a little bit.
So the good news is yes. The bad news is it's not ideal. So Facebook really is a pay-for-play platform, and the way in which you improve your reach And engagement is by opening the gates to a larger audience, and that means you have to pay for it on that platform. Yes, there are some organic ways in which you can go about it, but they're only going to get you so far. Facebook is absolutely pay for play, and you've got to pay the troll to cross the bridge. And you're even just investing small amounts of money will go a long way towards making improvements in that.
Yeah, that is really good insight, Dana. I have one more question, unless there's another one coming through. I have one
I'd love to answer if it's okay.
Please.
Yeah, Jeremy's on converting people from social media to being on an email list. So yes, absolutely recommended. So in recent months, as you're all probably aware, there was changes to tracking. So the iOS Apple updates came out, and you could opt out of tracking on certain platforms, including Facebook. And so I read a stat the other day that it was like something like 80% of people in the US have opted out of Facebook tracking, which is astronomical and is absolutely impacting all of the paid media that I'm implementing for the artists that I work with. Email is king. If you can continue to grow and build your email list, not just from a subscriber basis, but also from an engagement, so click-through rates, open rates, everything like that, you can continue to build that audience. You have a tool for landing directly in someone's inbox when they have also indicated that they want to hear from you. So one of the things that I do is usually at the beginning of every single campaign. So if it's a new release, if it's a live stream promotion, if there's a new merch initiative, if the artist is going on tour, we always start that campaign with a news coming soon, subscribe to my newsletter. You know, we find different ways to say it, but we always start with that, and we always boost that. So that's a tactic that I recommend that has been quite useful for us.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Dana. We do have a couple more questions, then I'm scared to not answer them, so I'm going to ask them. This one comes from Nat, and she asks, is it okay to post the same content both on Instagram and Facebook, or is it better to change it up? If so, how can I change it up?
So this is where your content calendar is going to be your month-to-month calendar, not the overarching calendar, but what is your content each for October look like? Is going to be really important, because you can actually start to plan what you're going to post on what platforms and what it looks like. Now, a really good way of looking at that is, is it an image? Is it a video? Is it horizontal? Is it vertical? Am I sharing that I've been added to a Spotify editorial playlist, in which case you often don't want to post that graphic directly in your feed, but you want to post it to your stories with the link. So again, this is where that calendar becomes really crucial, because you can see it visually in front of you and break it down a little bit. Yes, to a certain degree, absolutely, you want to plan content for specific platforms, but there is a lot of crossover in many ways between content that can work on YouTube and content that can work on Instagram TV, and content that can work on Facebook, and content that can work on an Instagram post. So just be mindful of what the piece of content is and where it makes the most sense for it to live.
Perfect. All right, I have two more questions, and then I think we'll wrap up. This one is, it's actually, I've got a question, sorry. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of getting verified on Instagram and getting those kind of blue ticks? Do you think that they are necessary? Do they promote reach at all, or are they kind of just a shiny thing that people want?
Well, yeah, they're definitely a shiny thing that people want, definitely. But they are also important in terms of verifying your artist brand, that it is your page, that it is your official account, and that you're not an imposter. So, yes, there's definitely still purpose with those. Absolutely.
Okay. And then the last question, which is the perfect question to end on, is are there any suggestions for resources to help develop your brand? It's a bit of a journey to go from musician to an image-based product. And there's the perfect answer for this, which is on the Music ACT website, and I think is on the Fred and Augustus website as well, which is a seminar just like this that was run by Dana not 3 or 4 weeks ago on developing your artist brand. It's fully recorded, and there's some handy digital assets that go along with it. Just follow the link that I've just put in the chat to see all of Music ACT's resources, all of the chats that Dana's done like this, all of the workshops, as well as a couple of others. That webpage will be continually updated as we do more digital programs, and it'll be a really handy compendium for anyone to kind of dig right in and learn as much as they can in as short a period of time as they possibly can.
I'm also going to do some shameless self-promotion and throw my website URL in the chat. There's a couple of guest posts that I've written on the topic, and also blog posts which are hosted directly on the site about the topic as well. So feel free to check those out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for coming to this amazing and insightful chat. Thank you so much, Dana, again, for everything that you've done for this program. It's been so good hearing you these last couple of sessions, talk about everything that you've learned over the course of your career and teaching us how to implement it in the best way that we can. I'm sure it won't be long before we have you back again to do something new. So yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined the chat today. There's a lot of thank yous coming through on the chat. So amazing stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
I've really enjoyed it. And thanks to everyone for getting up early on a Sunday and coming and joining us.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you for the next one. We have another digital program happening at the end of this month on September 26th. It's with an old Canberra local, Shannon Egan. That's going to be a bit of an industry 101 crash course on everything you need to know about the different sectors of the industry and how those things can affect you. So that'll be a really good one. Keep your eye on your inbox for that one. And as people who have attended this event, you'll be the first people to hear about tickets to that. So thank you again for everyone coming, and we'll see you at the end of the month.